Hi, Duncan. Thanks so much for agreeing to do this interview for the September 2022 edition of the Thinking Working Politically Community Practice newsletter. Let me start by introducing you briefly for the benefit of our audience, though you may need no introduction. Duncan Green has been working on international development for decades, and he's a household name for many of us involved in this field and trying to understand how change happens and why. Duncan is currently Senior Strategic Advisor for Oxfam GB, and he's also Professor in Practice at the LSE. And as many of you will know, he writes and curates the From Poverty to Power blog, which encourages us to think and challenge ourselves on all sorts of issues related to international development, including TWP, on a daily basis. So, Duncan, we are delighted that you are here with us to have this conversation. And we wanted to ask you a little bit about the Global Executive Leadership Initiative, or GELI, training program on influencing for senior leaders that you have been involved in with others over the past year. Can you tell us a little bit about this GELI course? How does it come about and why? And how might it be different from more traditional or standard training programs?
Thanks, Helena, and thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here and supporting the TWP community of practice, which I think is a fantastic initiative. GELI, as we call it, the Global Executive Leadership Initiative, is a course aimed at strengthening leadership skills in the aid sector. I run a little sub-bit of it, which is on influencing, which is basically putting TWP into practice. And what we do is we work with cohorts of 25 senior leaders in the aid sector at a time, taken more or less equally from the UN, NGOs, and the Red Cross, Red Crescent communities. We bring them together. And that's the first thing that's interesting about GELI, because normally those people are trained in their organizations. But we have a deliberate effort to build a collective approach to understanding change and bringing about change through influencing. And when we interviewed some sort of legends about this influencing idea, one of them summed it up by saying, well, you get to a senior position in aid organizations often by being good at tents and blankets. And then suddenly someone is asking you to stop the Saudis bombing Yemen. And that's a bit of a leap in terms of skill sets. So what we try and do is provide them with some simple tools, some effective ways to understand a problem, think about and get to a strategy which they can use on the run, because they're all super busy. So there's no point in asking people to do PhDs. It's all about sort of heuristics, rules of thumb, things that they can, case studies they can use for ideas and to help them just improve the quality of their work.
So, who was the driving force behind getting this course together? You mentioned that you have people from the UN, the Red Cross. You also have other NGOs. Where does that impetus come from?
I think, well, the impetus comes from, I think, a great, a general recognition, which I've seen very strongly in the NGO sector, but I think more generally, that it's not enough to run a nice program, a nice project. That aid organizations, if they want to achieve impact at scale, need to have influence on the wider system. They need to affect public policy. They need to affect social behaviors, social norms, and all of these things can be done, but they require a different skill set, as that Yemen example shows. And we think we've got some useful experiences to share, some ideas to bring into the room, and a way to get people in the room sharing their own experiences. Because we worked out that in each of these cohorts of 25 participants, we have about 500 years of experience working in the aid sector, much of it in this influencing space. So you just need to tap into that. You don't need to bring in lots of new stuff. You need to get people exchanging ideas and experiences, and then it really takes off.
And how do you come up with those 25 people? Do they apply for the course, or do you hand select them, or how does that work?
It's sort of a combination. So people can apply, but we also go out, especially to try and keep this spread between UN, NGOs, and Red Cross, Red Crescent. We actively seek a balance. And within NGOs, we want international and national NGOs, for example. So we do go out and seek that, and that is all run by the GELI team in Geneva. Luckily, I don't have to do that bit. And they try and get a senior level and a diverse spread of organisations and backgrounds. And they've done very well on the first three, I must say.
So you were saying that you actually are trying to showcase and I guess harness some of the experience that you have collected in the room with your participants. How do you shape the content of the course, and how intensive is it? How do you involve the participants?
Well, so what we realise is that when people are this busy, these are people who are UN resident coordinators or NGO country directors. They have the life from hell in terms of the number of emails and the number of meetings and the pressures on them. So what we do is get them away from that context for a 4-day face-to-face, and that enables them to take a deep breath, to reflect, to meet the other members of their cohort, the 25 people, to build a kind of camaraderie and to get a bit of momentum going. And in those 4 days, we present the sort of basic ideas of the course. We get them talking to each other, and then we have a kind of celebratory but also very useful simulation game in a crisis in an imaginary country called GELI on the last day. And then that energy carries over into 4 weeks of online modules where they do a combination of reading, listening to podcasts, watching videos, and one webinar per module. And they have there's some resources for coaching, because a lot of these people, what they really value is a chance just to talk about the challenges they face in their countries, in their contexts. And so they can pick anyone from our team and just say, I want an hour with you on Tuesday, and we fix a time, and then just go and talk through how we can help and any ideas that might be useful.
You were saying something really important about the kind of different skill set that might be needed for influencing. So can you tell us a little bit about how you get to that? And in particular, I'm interested in getting a sense from you. You gave the Yemen example. How do you address sort of politics and political dynamics and power? Is that something that is integrated into the course, or how do you go about doing that?
Alina, you'll be pleased to hear that politics and power are at the centre of everything. Okay.
I don't believe it. What? I've never heard that.
So the first session, which I do, is on how do you analyze the context, right? And we start off with this famous quote from Einstein: "If I had an hour to save the world, I would spend 49 minutes understanding the problem, 59 minutes understanding the problem, and 1 minute finding the solution." And so we do a good session on problem analysis. How do you drill down into a problem to find things which are amenable to action? And then how do you understand the power and politics around those potential actions, using some simple stakeholder mapping and power analysis and political economy analysis and things which the TWP, we have a lot of TWP documents, don't worry, on our website. And then the interesting bit for me is, how do you then bridge from that to a strategy? How do you get from there to saying, okay, so we've done all this analysis, so what are the 3 or 4 things we've identified which might make sense as an influencing strategy? How do we flesh them out, test them, try them out, and maybe chuck them away if they're not working, or expand them if they go well? And that, I think, is for me a bit the missing piece, which I've been working on in the last few weeks, just to try and, because otherwise what you get is talking a lot about the context and politics matters and power matters, and then people just go back to do what they would do anyway. So it's, how do you actually become more intentional and more informed in your action based on all these insights into thinking and working politically? It's the working politically bit as well as the thinking politically bit.
So, as part of the course, do you then sort of exhort people to work differently and then see how that goes after the course is finished, or have you not thought that far yet?
No. So some of the people are already doing that. So I have one. I won't name her country, but she's a UN person who's trying to get violence against children taken more seriously in the country where she works. And we've had one-to-ones thinking about stakeholder mapping, identifying the role of traditional chiefs. She's got a very good connection with the First Lady in her country, who she's persuaded to lead the campaign. And we're talking about the language to use around this issue, what will alienate, what will actually resonate in that particular context. So, and there's quite a few examples already surfacing of people using the ideas because this is what they do. In many ways, what happens is people go, oh, well, that's kind of what I'm doing anyway, but I've never had a way to describe it or explain it to my team because these are mainly leaders. So this enables them to sort of systematize what they're doing and bring in other people into working in the same way. So instead of relying on people to learn by experience, painful experience for 30 years and then do it like this, there's just kind of a shortcut because there are some things that you can do which will get you there quicker.
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to ask you about that. So these are all things that resonate, even if the language might be different. The substance of this is very real, it sounds like, from people's experiences, and they sort of have their own way of reading their context and understanding.
Yeah, and the difference, so I've taught this at master's level, and what I realized after the first of our pilots in Oman is that what I thought was participation and participatory methods, which we're very committed to, wasn't good enough for these guys. So, with master's students, you produce a case study, you produce quite a sort of elaborate structure for people, and then say, so follow these rules and get going. With the people we've got in the room, you just say, power. It can be hidden, it can be visible. What's your experience? And then they're off, right? They've got so much in there. So you have to really not try and orchestrate. You have to be much more expansive and permissive, and then you get great conversations. And you nudge things towards, in certain directions, but you can't be nearly as directive if you want to get good participation.
Yeah. And I think you've mentioned that you've done 3 pilots so far in Amman, Nairobi, and Dakar.
Yep.
Can you tell me a little bit about how those went and what have been sort of eureka moments, either for you or for participants, that you thought, something, the penny is really dropping here, or something is illuminating?
Yeah, so some of them were that first one I mentioned about being much more permissive in terms of the style. The best one. Some of the best sessions are where we just sit in a circle. We have somebody introducing a topic, and then we just freestyle it. And it works every time. We initially had a big structure with a learning management system, an online platform, lots of emails, and actually it turns out no one reads their emails. so what we've now moved toward is a system of tutorials, our personal tutors, and WhatsApp. And that is apparently the way to deal with senior leaders, all right? So they feel a kind of personal connection. We've got 3 or 4 people who connect with me or with somebody else in the team, and I send them WhatsApp saying, how's it going? And you get much better response rates than if they get these kind of robo emails every week.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. The thing I wasn't sure about, because it's not something I've ever done before, is a simulation, and it rocks. It's amazing. So this one day where people are in character, we take them out of their comfort zone. So an NGO person is suddenly the government of GELI, and a UN person is suddenly a kind of youth movement, and they have to stay enrolled during lunch and lobby each other and send and tweet, and it reinforces what we've been studying over the 4 days, but they also have huge fun. And everybody says that's the best bit. Yeah, they love the simulation. The final thing I think I thought was true, and I definitely now believe is true: defend the coffee breaks. Okay, classic conference mistake is, if somebody's speaking too long, we'll just take 15 minutes instead of 20. We do not do that. We actually take longer coffee breaks rather than shorter ones. And everybody says the networking is the most useful bit. So we defend those coffee breaks brutally, and it works.
That's actually interesting. So does this mean that these are in-person trainings that you have been doing?
These 4 days are face-to-face, which is also, if you're doing a face-to-face meeting these days, you start off with an enormous buzz because people are so excited about being in a room.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think it would work as well virtually, or you really do need to have the people in the room and build the sort of trust and the relationships in place?
It wouldn't work near. If you try and do it virtually, people will be on their emails. People will be too busy. They'll be drawn off on calls. That happens anyway, but to a lesser extent. And you can't go out for a meal in the evening, go to the beach, or all that other side of things. So, especially for this first few days where you're bonding, essentially, it's
Mhm.
really important that it's face to face.
So, what's next on the horizon? I believe there's a region that I haven't heard from, which is Latin America. Are you
Yeah.
heading there?
We've got Panama, Bangkok. That's another region you haven't heard of,
Oh, yes.
and second visit to Nairobi, all in September. So we're currently rejigging some of the materials in light of what we've learned and the feedback we've had. Not major changes, but some minor tweaks. Um, then we want to see where it goes. I mean, I think what we've got at the moment is proof of concept. So we
Yeah.
think the structure, the methodology. The other thing I didn't mention on methodology is that we try and stick to roughly 20% teaching and 80% participation. That's quite hard to keep to because we all think we are great and need to lecture more, but we try and keep that down. Um, so we think we've got a really good methodology, good proof of concept. We think it works, and we also think it's quite adaptable. I think what we're interested in now is adapting to new audiences. It doesn't have to be UN, NGO, and Red Cross, Red Crescent. We think we could do this with private sector, with governments. I mean, we're interested in developing this. So if any of your listeners want to discuss
Mhm.
potential channels for this, and we're having lots of conversations with people already in different bits of the parts of the world and different parts of the development sector, then just get in touch. We're keen to talk.
Okay, brilliant. Duncan, thank you so much. Enjoy Panama.
I certainly
Um,
will.
and yeah, thank you so much for your time.